Our professor used to say learning the details is important in being an SLP. Therefore, we started with the most basic in neuroanatomy, the neurons. We learned about the types of neurons based on its structure, such as bipolar and multipolar neurons. We learned the different supporting cells, how neurons connect and communicate with each other, and the different neuronal pathways. The second lesson was about the most complex and magnificent organ in the human body, the brain. We learned about the different regions of the brain, such as the brainstem and the cerebellum. Brodmann areas was also introduced in this lesson. Learning the Brodmann areas is very important to us SLP because through this, we learn which part of the brain are responsible for swallowing and communication. For example, Brodmann area 22, also called Wernicke's area, is involved in comprehension of speech, and Brodmann area 44, the Broca's area, which is important for speech production. Our third lesson was about the spinal cord. Our spinal cord is important for the communication between your body and your brain. If a part of your spinal cord is injured, nerve impulses can get through and may result in paralysis. One of the most common injury an SLP may encounter is cervical spinal cord injury causing dysphagia, which is difficulty in swallowing. We also learned about the peripheral nerve and cranial nerves. Peripheral nerves are sensory nerves that connects the brain and the spinal cord to the entire human body. Cranial nerves are nerves that arises directly from the brain. Knowing all of these helps us know which nerves are involved in swallowing and communication. For example, for both swallowing and speech, innervation of cranial nerves number 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are involved. In order to keep the brain alive, we need to learn to nourish our brain. As an SLP, we needed to learn how protection and nutrition happen because if it's not protected or not giving the right nutrient it needs, it will die. For example, if a blood vessel is blocked, nutrition cannot go to that part of the brain and causes damage. Sleep is emphasized in this lesson. Sleep is very important because it's when our brain regenerates. Our sixth lesson was about the development of the nervous system from conception to death. It is important for us to understand how the nervous system develops and how these different stages of development affect the early experiences in life. On the second trimester during the prenatal period, synaptogenesis happens. Synaptogenesis is the formation of synapses between neurons in the nervous system. On the first 6 years of life, there is development of associative fibers and tracts, as well as development in plasticity, which increases memory, thinking, and language. The next thing we learned was about neuroplasticity and lateralization. Brain plasticity is the ability of our brain to modify its connections or rewire itself. Without this ability, our brain would be unable to develop from infancy to adulthood or recover from brain injury. Lateralization means that our brain is asymmetrical by design. This design allows us to process many things at once. For example, the left side of the brain is responsible for controlling the right side of the body and perform tasks that have to do with logic, such as in science and mathematics. On the other hand, the right hemisphere coordinates the left side of the body and perform tasks that have to do with creativity and arts. Our next topic was about the neurosensory organization of sensation and perception for communication. Our senses allows us to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. They are very important to help us experience the world around us. A sensory pathway is divided into 3 sections. First-order neuron carries the sensory impulse from the sensory receptors to the CNS. Second-order neuron carries the information from the CNS to the thalamus. Information traveling along second-order neurons decussates from one side of the CNS to the other side. Third-order neuron carries sensory information from the thalamus to the cerebral cortex. Our 9th lesson was about neuromotors. The motor pathway are pathways which originate in the brain or brainstem and descend down the spinal cord to control the amotor neurons. One system is called the pyramidal system. It is extremely important to SLPs as strokes often affect the motor system. cortico-cobulbar tract is part of the pyramidal system that carries the motor messages that are most important for speech and swallowing. Extrapyramidal tract, on the other hand, carries autonomic motor impulses to voluntary muscles in the body. During speech, muscles are receiving input from both the pyramidal and extrapyramidal systems. SLPM, or Speech and Language Processing Model, is an important model that carefully describes and identifies observable speech and language behavior. Auditory reception segment is the primary recognition system. Analyzing takes place before spoken messages can be understood. Central language thought segment allows the individual to understand what he hears, to integrate previously learned information and experiences with new information. The speech production segment is considered as a primary production system. This process turns the messages into spoken form. This model is important to us because it has allowed us to understand the events that takes place in speech and language functioning. Our final lesson was about memory and learning. Executive function skills play an important role in learning. These skills enable us to plan, focus attention, remember instructions, and do multiple tasks successfully. As an SLP, we will encounter children lacking with these skills. Children aren't born with these skills. They are born with the potential to develop them. If children are deprived from their environment, their skill development can be seriously delayed or impaired. Memory is the process in which information is encoded, stored, and retrieved. We learned that memories happen in different parts of the brain and that to be able to store information in our long-term memory, it needs rehearsal. We also learned children with autism will have good semantic memory but difficulty with episodic memory. Overall, learning neuroanatomy and physiology had been fun and very challenging. I learned to appreciate more of how the human nervous system works and also realized how important and critical it is for us to know all of these in helping our future patients. I was very intimidated with the course on the first day. Reading all of the units in the syllabus made me doubt myself if I could even pass. Passing the subject was all in my mind, but my professor was right when she said, it's not about passing, but it's about the learnings you bring home with you by the end of the day. With the help of my classmates and professor, Ms. Jen, it made my learning experience memorable and worthwhile.